But I am a mathematician and physicist, so thanks for the comments about us knowing nothing. Great morale boost for all of us scientists out there. I'm also an engineer and a member of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, which Maurice himself said he was a member. So I'd be interested to know if he's still a member after what he's been saying on his in his book and on the radio this evening. My main point out of what's been discussed so far is, Maurice, you talk about the fact that scientists don't fully understand the structure of the atom. Well, that's true, but we do know that it's correct. There is scientific evidence which shows that it's correct. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean that the structure is incorrect. Now, while you might have what you think is a theory, which, without going into any details of it, and I'm not a theoretical or atomic physicist, may well have no more or less merit than any other theory, you don't appear to be giving us any evidence for this. All you've got is you've taken some effects and you've come up with a theory which might explain it. And that's the hypothesis.
Okay.
The first step in the scientific process.
Okay, Maurice, what do you have to say about that?
Well, Reese, I am still a member of the IET. I correspond with them on a regular basis. I'm dealing here with the first 20 pages of the book. The book's got 250 pages in it. Once we get the hydrogen atom right and we get the atom right, all of the 12 great mysteries of science are answered. Now, with your atom, or the orthodox structure of the atom, you say it's right. It is not right, I can assure you. There is no evidence for saying it's right. It's a farce.
Well, the whole thing is... Michelson-Morley had a pretty good experiment which sort of showed...
I'm well aware of the Michelson-Morley experiment and the ether and all that nonsense, and that's exactly what it is. And if you go down that road, you're never going to get anywhere. First of all, you've got to throw out relativity, you've got to throw out quantum theory, and you've got to start again with the atom from scratch. And it's very, very simple. The atom is not an electrical entity, it is electromagnetic. And this is the problem with science today. They can't grasp that the electron is only electric for half the time. They can't explain why a magnetic field appears around a wire when an electric current flows. The 12 great mysteries are real mysteries, which I've addressed, I've set them down, and I can explain in the book why there are 8 shells to the atom, why the shells carry the number of electrons, 2, 8, 18, 32, 32, 18, 8, 2. I can explain why the shells are offset by at least 45 degrees. I can explain why the atom doesn't spring apart. You don't need gluons. I mean, this is bizarre. In 1935...
what you have is a theory, it's a hypothesis of why those things might be true. You have no experimental data there, do you?
I have lots of experimental data in the book, and it's all been verified by science. Every single step of what I write in the book has already been verified by science. For example, in 2009, a team of scientists at Yale University, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, successfully generated both gravity waves and anti-gravity waves, although they don't know what they've done. What they were doing was they discovered an attractive force of light and showed it could be used to manipulate electrons in semiconducting micro and nano devices. They then split the infrared light beam into 2 streams, passed one along a transmission line, described as a silicon nanowire waveguide, delaying its propagation and introducing a phase shift at 180 degrees. This produced the anti-gravity waves. Now, everything in the book is backed up by hard scientific evidence. It's not mine. There are spiked neutrons that were discovered by the Hahn-Meitner Institute in Berlin in 2008.
So what about your equation so you're saying that everything's backed up by scientific evidence of others, even your equation...
That's the last question, by the way, Reese.
Correctly, E equals God, because E equals God was certainly never a part of my mathematical learning.
No, well, your learning is about to start, Reese. I didn't say E equals God. What I said was E equals MC squared. Now, God is light. If we look at the literature, all of the spiritual literature, it doesn't matter if it's the Bhagavad Gita of the Hindu, or if we look at...
Gentlemen, we've got to take a quick break there. We'll continue this after the ad break just very quickly, but bear with us, and we'll be right back after this.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The More Show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still currently joined my guest, Maurice Cotterall, author of Future Science, Forbidden Science for the 21st Century. Maurice, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
Now, do you normally get a lot of scientists on the attack then with your work? Because I asked you that before, but yet I mean, is that normal?
It's normal because they have their own agenda. Physicists get paid billions of dollars every year to look for the cause of gravity. So the last thing they're going to do is find the cause of gravity, and the last thing they're going to do is welcome somebody else from outside finding the cause of gravity. It's like asking turkeys to vote for Christmas. I mean, if they were to do that, then they'd all be on the dole next week. So they dig their heels in. They don't want to see the truth or change. They don't want to understand. They want their ideas to be accepted, and they don't wish to move forward. Now, what I had to do in Future Science was make absolutely sure that every single step of the way had already been verified by orthodox science.
Right.
And what I've done is put all the pieces together and
great mysteries of physics to begin with.
Absolutely. And I'd like to say before I start that any 10-year-old can understand what's going to come next. So don't be put off by science. It's easy. My view on science is that physics is a complete fraud. It's a complete scam. And most people don't realize that they know more about the scientists of today anyway, so don't feel too bad about it. The problem is these guys walk around in their white coats, and most people see our civilization of today as scientifically advanced, when in fact we're very primitive. Scientists understand very little of the world we see around us. For example, they don't understand why the smallest bundle of matter, the atom, is stable. For example, they don't understand why the positive protons in the middle of an atom don't just spring apart, which is what you'd expect given that positive repels positive. They don't understand why the orbiting negative electrons don't get sucked into the atom and annihilate themselves, because negative should be attracted to positive. They don't understand why the negative particles orbit the atom in 8 different shells, or why the shells are offset by at least 45 degrees to each other, or why the shells contain the number of negative charges that they do. They don't understand the purpose of the neutron inside the atom, the non-charged particle found inside most atoms, and not so, for the most part, they just disregard it because it's neutral. Now, given that nobody understands how the atom works, it comes as no surprise to find out that nobody understands why objects fall to the ground. And as so often happens in science, when nobody understands something, they give it a name, like gravity, in the hope that the question will go away. The fact is, nobody understands what causes gravity. Scientists do not understand how a permanent magnet works. They don't understand why a magnet sticks to the fridge of your door, the door of your fridge, excuse me. And they don't understand how electricity works. They don't understand why a magnetic field appears around a wire when an electric current flows. They have no idea how electromagnetism or even a doorbell actually work. Astrophysicists don't understand why the galaxies are spiral-shaped or why stars cluster. And they don't understand what causes the sunspot cycle, global warming and global cooling. They don't understand why the middle of the Earth is red hot. And all of these are explained in Future Science very simply to any 10-year-old, and it's very, very straightforward.
Well, why do you think that you've found some of these answers? Then, I mean, is that because you've a more open mind in a sense?
Well, I was born at the right time for technology. For example, I couldn't have done what I did, for example, without the computer and without photocopying machines, without calculators. So I came at the right time in the right place. So that was a bonus. 4 of the mysteries are what makes the atom stable. Why don't the positive bits in the middle spring apart? Why don't the negative bits get sucked into the middle? Why does the atom have a certain number of shells? Why are those shells arranged as they are? So that's 4 of the mysteries. Scientists don't understand any of that stuff. They're totally perplexed by it. Well, if you can't understand how the atom is made, how on earth can you understand how a collection of atoms, like an apple, will fall off a tree and hit the ground? You can't. So you've got to figure out how the atom works first. Then you can figure out how gravity works by looking at the hydrogen atom, the simplest of atoms, because I know that 93% of the atoms in the universe are hydrogen, and they give off I've discovered that they give off corkscrew-style radio waves, electric and magnetic, and it's these corkscrew waves that pull objects towards them. So, again, it all becomes very straightforward once you redesign the atom.
Right.
And the same goes for the other mysteries, like how does permanent magnetism work? How does electricity work? Why does a magnetic field appear when a current flows? Why do stars cluster? Why a galaxy is spiral-shaped? What drives the sunspot cycle? What causes global warming and global cooling? All of these are answered once we change the shape of that very basic, fundamental, 10-year-old atom.
Okay. And again, before we just move on, how have your peers reacted to your work as well? I mean, this is, like you say, it's, future science, isn't it?
It took me 6 weeks to figure this stuff out in 2007, Kevin, but it took me 3 years to find a way of explaining it. And in 2010, I wrote a paper, which is on my website for people to download for free, so you can have a look at the pictures. They're all JPEGs, and there's a PDF file as well. Very straightforward. The UK Institute of Engineering and Technology accepted how gravity works for deposit in their research paper database. But as they explained to me at the time, they are not the governing body for subjects concerning physics. So they suggested I send the paper to the UK Institute of Physics in London. But they refused anyone to read the paper on the grounds that, they gave 3 reasons. There was nothing in it they had been working on, because it was completely new, and because it contained no mathematics.
Okay.
It was just too easy for everybody to understand.
Okay. Well, let's go into it. Let's go into gravity then, in your opinion.
Okay. In the last illustration, I think it was, we looked at the magnetic wave coming off the electron as it orbited the hydrogen atom. And what we see now with this illustration is the capacitance cycle of the hydrogen atom. And a similar thing happens. As the electron orbits the atom, it gives off a corkscrew-style electric wave. And the box on the right shows the electron changing as it orbits from an electric particle to a magnetic particle, then back to an electric particle, then back to a magnetic particle. And this is the key to understanding gravity, because what's happening is, as hydrogen electron orbits the hydrogen atom, it gives off corkscrew waves that strike neighboring atoms, and it causes the neighboring atom to spin in the same direction. And the electrons are synchronized in the neighboring atom with those of the hydrogen atom. And what that means is, if you put a load of atoms together, is that it's the magnetic moments from the spinning electrons in different atoms that bring the atoms together, what we call gravity. And it's as simple as that. Again, I urge listeners to go to my website, download the paper, How Gravity Works. It's only 8 or 9 pages. The diagrams are very, very simple. There's 143 diagrams in Future Science.
Okay.
And as I say, it's designed for 10-year-olds. There's nothing difficult about it.
Okay.
It's only difficult if it's wrong to begin with. And that's the problem we have with modern science.
Yeah.
It's wrong to begin with. It imagines that the electron is an electric particle, when it's not. It's only electric for half the time.
And what about things like anti-gravity? Can you go there?
Anti-gravity, that's explained in the book. What we find is that as the hydrogen atom spins, it gives off this corkscrew wave, and that brings atoms together. Well, if you delay the wave and reverse it so that it's opposite to the gravity wave, then what we get is anti-gravity. And instead of pulling things to bits, it separates things. So, for example, if you bombard a glass of water with anti-gravity, the bonding of the hydrogen and the oxygen atoms fail, and the atoms separate, so we get oxygen, free oxygen on one side, and free hydrogen on the other side, which means that we can generate unlimited free energy by burning hydrogen in cars and other machines, and we get free oxygen as well, simply by generating a gravity wave from a bunch of hydrogen atoms, and then reversing the phase of the wave. And that's as simple as it is.
Okay, well, we have another caller on the line. I believe